Good morning, colleagues. I've not been with EduPeg long, but I'm learning this, and I'm learning this, and there's lots of things I'm learning, because I'm also open to learning. My name is Al Witten. I want to acknowledge the work that you do. Firstly, in terms of as leaders, giving up your time to be here on a Saturday. You now work in almost all the provinces in the country. And sir, it's sometimes very difficult to get people to workshops on a Saturday morning. So I want to just appreciate that. Thank you for being here. And secondly, let me acknowledge that the work that you do in your schools and the incorporation of the EduPeg program into your schools. This is a national project. Okay. I'm not an integral part of the project, but I know about it. That's why I was interested in supporting Taryn and the work. And nationally, we hear a lot about the work of EduPeg and the footprint it has in our country. So I want to acknowledge you and bringing the program into your schools. And then thirdly, I'd like to say that when we do some of the work we're going to do today, it's not only about us as leaders in positional authority at our schools, whether it be the principal, deputy principal, HODs, or even teacher leaders. It's not just about that. The work that I do at the level that we work in, both at province, district, and in schools, I always say it's not just about your positional authority. It's also about me as a person, who I am as a leader. Because you're not only a leader in the school. You're also a leader in your home, in your church, at the sports club. Right? In whatever organization you belong to, you take the leadership role. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is about leadership, yes, at the level of the school, but also applies to me as an individual. Okay? Half of our learners across the country, I'm not saying this applies to our schools, but across the country have only covered half of the curriculum. So let's take it one step further. So we cover 50% for this year. The learners get progressed. Next year, another. What's happening? Getting less. Backlog or gap. Okay, let's call it a learning gap. So a learning gap starts 1 year, learners get progressed, again we don't cover. What happens to the learning gap? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Colleagues, do we wonder by the time some of our learners get to high school that they just can't cope? I always say the problem is always much more complex than that. It's not just one or two things even. There's lots of things that affect the lack of curriculum coverage. But colleagues, if we don't work to improve in this area, okay, our education system is doomed. As a system, we can do much better. Would you agree with me, colleagues? That's what we refer to when we talk about the moral purpose of education. Right? It should make us feel disappointed, angry, saying it's a disaster. Right? And we say that collectively as a country, okay, without pointing fingers at schools or individual schools and pushing the blame to them. We say, what can we do as a country to support our schools in doing better? Individuals and even organizations are sometimes compared to an iceberg. Okay? And what's important about the iceberg is the principle of visibility. Right? 10 to 12% of the iceberg is visible, only 10 to 12%. The rest of the iceberg sits below the water. You can't see it. But that's the biggest part, right? That's why change is so difficult. Okay? Because most times we just focus on the smallest part. We're not working on the underneath part. Right? The work of us as school leaders is to work down the whole iceberg, from the top right down. So where do we start our journey of change and improvement? If we say that 53% is not good enough, and in my school, our schools here today, I'm sure the curriculum coverage is much higher. But can we do better? Can we do better? We can always, even if it's someone said it, small bites, even if it's small bites. Okay? That's why we're here today, to ask that question to ourselves as leaders. Can we do better? How do we then embark on this journey of change? What would one characteristic of an ideal school be in terms of what we have been discussing this morning? I'm going to start with this table.
A school whose teachers knows their roles and responsibilities, and also a school who has a clear vision.
We said the school that takes a moderation and monitoring as a top responsibility.
A school that takes moderation and monitoring as a top responsibility.
We said the SMT should be goal-oriented.
Oh.
And make sure that, and you should also make sure that the vehicle that you are driving, the teachers are also on the same team.
Ah, lovely. In our country right now, we're looking to raise up real leaders that can take us into the future. That's leadership practice. Because very often, what we talk don't match the walk. Who can tell me what the vision of the school is without reading it? Okay, I'm not going to call people. I love your visions. It's really good, well constructed. But colleagues, it cannot only be words. Okay? A vision is so important because all of us have a vision. You may not speak about it explicitly, but you have a vision for your life, for your family, for where you want to be in 5 or 10 years' time. You must have a vision. Okay? Because that is what guides and drives you to do what you're doing. Right? Why don't we think about that at our schools too? As leaders, it's important for us to talk about the vision, to motivate others towards action. And then, of course, it always reminds us why we are doing what we are doing at school. I like this last one, because in difficult times in a school, when you as a school leader, the deputy principal, even the HOD is going through a time of crisis with teachers. Okay. When things are really going tough, sometimes you must remind our colleagues, we have to go through this pain because it has to be part of what we do to achieve our vision. Your vision is your bigger picture, your dream, your desired future. Your mission is how to get there. And a vision and mission should always be underpinned by a set of values. Okay? Now let's ask a simple question. What is a value?
A moral disposition.
Lovely. It's a moral disposition. Our values come from our beliefs and our histories. Right? It's also connected to how we think about ourselves and our work in this world. So here's what I'd like us to start thinking about. Do we have values at our schools? Does everyone know what those values are? Are we clear? Do we share them? These values should be made explicit and everybody should agree to them. What we say is when we start the work of change, don't focus on the bad things, on what you don't have. You build of what you already have, and that's your strengths. Write down your 5 personal strengths on the cards in front of you. Yeah. 1 asset or strength on each card. So 1 per card like you did with your values. Okay? Put all your strength into the center of the circle, and then we're going to put our assets into our asset cup.
In order to make a difference to education, we need to have to adopt a growth mindset. Now, when we talk about these 2 mindsets, you can see, like we said, when you look at the picture, that a growth mindset, you grow, you develop, you fail, but you continue. When you fail, you don't say it is the end. There is hope after all. And then with a fixed mindset, we just said that there's no growth, there's no development, you take things personally all the time. The question now would be, what kind of a mindset do you have in order for you to, to implement some changes in your school as the managers in your school? What kind of a mindset do you have?
An instructional leader is someone whose primary orientation, whose main focus is on teaching and learning in the school, and the role that he or she has to play to support, to improve, and to deepen the practices of teaching and learning. The instructional core is located in the classroom, made up of 3 components: the student or the learner, the teacher, and the curriculum. That's the instructional core. Okay? Those 3 components are in constant and dynamic interaction with each other all of the time. Now, colleagues, as the SMT members, that is your most important focus. Those 3 components in the classroom, every day, every lesson. That is where your leadership should be focusing. Instructional leadership. So,
choosing the right resources for the learners and
yeah, it's very important. Okay, choosing the right resources for the learners and for learning. I always say to schools, the first thing when you do budget planning was not where we're going to do our excursions next year and give that the budget line item. The first planning on your budget is resources for supporting and improving learning in your school. Okay, so thank you for that, sir. It's important. Anyone else? Instructional leadership. Yes, ma'am.
I think instructional leadership is to make sure that everyone, every stakeholders know their roles and responsibilities at the school.
Nice. Knowing your roles and responsibilities at that school in support of what?
Of teaching and learning.
Lovely.
To lead a team in such a way to develop an organization that provides excellence in all areas of its purpose.
Very nice. It's a very academic, but it's spot on. Okay, and I like the fact that you talk about leading a team. We don't talk about instructional leadership as one person. Do our teachers at our school care for our learners? And do we as leaders show that we care for our learners through modeling, through being examples of caring, even in the way we relate to each other? Never forget to celebrate small victories, because you build self-confidence, you build self-belief, and you build motivation.
We are all aware that we've got so many challenges, but we only need 3, and that you feel they affect learning outcomes in our schools. So we will discuss as a group, and then we'll come up with that 3. Then what we are going to do, we are going to write each challenge on a separate card. I would like to pose this question to them. How do they feel after this workshop? To wrap this session.
There's some important issues that we've discussed today that you led me to rethink again, to go back and revisit some of the things that will make our school successful.
I think we've been doing IQMS just for the sake of doing IQMS. And then there are needs, the teacher needs, and yet we don't follow up in developing those teachers. Maybe that's where we at times have problems with them not complying, because we fail the teachers. So for us at CVA, I think it must start with the SMT. So what, we must draw up a plan. how are we going to rectify the needs that the school and the challenges that we're facing? And looking at the school vision and mission, are we living by that? And the school vision and mission lead us in achieving what we want to achieve. If it needs to be reviewed and changed, then we can start there.
I think we are all enthused and energized to go back with a clearer focus of how to affirm our teachers, to make them understand that we have their backs, that we are here, we understand their challenges, and we are committed to addressing those challenges so that we can best service our learners.
We need to embrace and uphold our vision because everything comes from it. And then what we will do in our school, we will try to align our vision and our values with our programs.
The vision of the school, maybe it's too much in our files. Instead of being visible, and the learners actually breathing it, us and our parents. I think we all need, as the other speakers have also indicated, to work on it. So maybe shorten it because it's too much words and they're too English.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need simple English and fewer words.
Lovely.
Thank you, everybody. I think this has been an absolutely amazing session. And I think if you look around the room with all these asset cups and all the values and everything, if we took the 9 schools here and we took all this energy into the rest of the country, it would make a huge difference, right? So I feel very proud. We feel very proud as an organization to be supporting you. We feel very proud of how everyone turned up and was 100% today. And we feel particularly proud because we had an unexpected visitor in the form of the DDG, Dr. Peter Beers, who witnessed some of your incredible enthusiasm and hard work. So I just want to hand over to him for a quick word.
I really salute you for dedicating your time and come here to be filled your cup again. We work with the most valuable asset that God has created, that this country has. The future of this country depends on what happens with those beautiful faces that's staring at us every day. Colleagues, the Western Cape Education Department's vision is quality education for every learner, in every school, in every class, every day.
There we go. There we go.
And our leadership, your visions that you have, is a vision that strengthens that ultimate vision. A good teacher is like a candle. It lights others till it consumes itself. Now, maybe that is one of the best descriptions of our job. Our job is every day to go with our candle, with our light, and to light the candles of others, till our own candle exists no more. But when that day comes, there are thousands and millions of lights that you have lit up.